welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and today I'm excited to be diving into a solo playthrough for Marvel Champions from Fantasy Flight Games. Just before we get started with the playthrough, a big thank you to the community for your fantastic feedback in the solo setup video in regards to the mulligan phase, where we're able to discard cards from our hand if we so choose, and then draw back up to our hand size. You'll see at the bottom of the screen 6 cards that I laid out asking you guys what I should do, and ironically, even though I got a large amount of feedback for specific cards or sometimes none of the cards at all, I'm actually going to choose to use the hand as is. I actually kind of like some of the things I'm seeing here, and I'm going to try to use that. So before we move into the playthrough, I do want to make mention of the fact we need to know the win and lose conditions first. So let's go over those quickly, and then we'll dive into the very first player turn. The villain will win the game, meaning of course the players will lose the game if the villain succeeds in its scheme, its main scheme. So you can see here the break-in is the main scheme for Rhino, and at the very top left of this card you'll see a 7 followed by an icon of an individual or meeple. That represents the number of players playing the game. So you're going to times that number by the number of people playing the game to find out how much scheme this villain needs to accomplish in order to win or beat you. This is something you don't want to see happen, so when you're playing solo, it's going to be a straight 7. The players will win the game if Rhino has been reduced in hit points down to 0 for the first stage in this case, which you can see his hit point dial, as we said earlier, is at 14. So if I reduce that down to 0, then the first stage of Rhino is complete. And then we would go ahead and remove this card and move on to the second stage behind it, which may have some changes to the hit points, some of the attacks, some of the scheming. We'll have to see when we get there. So now that we have the win and lose conditions out of the way, let's talk about this player reference card really quick. Now on both sides there is text. On this side we're seeing the player phase, on the opposite side is the villain phase. So if you're a brand new player to this game, this is the side that's going to help you understand what you can do on your turn. On the opposite side is going to help you understand how the villain phase operates. We're going to be seeing all of this during this video, so I don't need to go through all of these, but it's great to just have a quick glance at this before we begin the very first round. So Peter Parker knows that Rhino is not going to be an easy foe to go up against, though the first thing I'm going to do is play Daredevil. We're going to bring Daredevil right into play as an ally. Now in order to bring Daredevil in, I have to pay a cost of 4 resources in order to do so. All the cards in your hand, the very bottom, for example, this one right here, has a resource that you can go ahead when you discard this card to gain that number of resources. In this case, just 1. So there are cards that have 2 or maybe more, but in this case, the type of resource doesn't matter, but the game has mental, physical, energy, and wild resources. And again, certain abilities on certain cards may ask for certain types of resources, but as a general rule, when putting cards into play from your hand to the table that have this cost in the top left-hand corner, any type of resource will work. So we know we need 4. The first card I want to play is going to be actually very thematic, seeing as Daredevil's coming to play, the Power of Justice, seeing Daredevil just burst through the window here. And it says on it, double the number of resources this card generates when paying for a Justice yellow card. And I'm trying to pay for this. So by putting this card and using it, by discarding this, I'm not only getting the 1 resource here, it's actually going to be 2 resources. So that is going to be fantastic because now I've got 2 of the 4 covered with 1 card, and I can put this in my discard pile. The next card I'm going to use in order to discard for a resource is going to be Heroic Intuition. So this one's a straight up discard for this resource right here, which is energy. We're going to discard that. That gets us up to 3. And lastly, I'm going to use Peter Parker's main ability as a scientist. He has a resource generation ability that allows me to go ahead and gain 1 mental resource, giving me the full total of 4. I don't have to exhaust my card to get this. I just use it only once per round. Just like that, Daredevil is in play and paid for. Next, I'm going to go ahead and change from Peter Parker over to Spider-Man because I want to do some attacking. Okay, I think we've waited long enough. It's time for Spider-Man to swing into action with Daredevil and do some damage to Rhino while we can. So we're going to go ahead and exhaust both of these guys, the ally and my hero, in order to do a total of 4 damage to Rhino. But just before we do that, we got to look underneath the attack here to see if there's any icons of a symbol which represents a hit. And there is on Daredevil. Some allies will have this, and what it means is that ally takes an actual hit of damage every single time it does one of these things. In this case, Daredevil has one of those icons under attack, so when he does an attack, he takes a hit. When he thwarts against schemes, he's going to take a hit. So that's slowly going to whittle away his HP until he's knocked out and gone. So I got to use him wisely and strategically. So as of right now, I've chosen to go ahead, team him up with Spider-Man for 4 damage. So we're going to knock down Rhino's health. And just like that, down to 10 health, quite happy about that first hit, and we still have 3 cards in hand. We have Mockingbird, the Swinging Web Kick, and we have Tenacity. Now these are 3 really good cards. I'm going to actually keep them because the cost of actually bringing them into play would essentially mean that I'd have to use all the other cards for resources and lose them. So I'm going to hold on to them and see how my next hand turns out. Maybe I'll get some cards I can throw away so I can keep some of these other ones because I actually really like my current hand. So with that said, my turn is ending right now. So after ending your player turn, you can choose to discard any number of cards from your hand. As I mentioned already, I really like these 3, and these were actually 3 cards mentioned by the community in the last solo setup video as 3 of the better cards in my hand. So I'm going to hold on to these and see how the player deck kind of spills its cards out into my hand after this as we recoup back up. So it's at this point right now that we draw back up to our hand size, which is mentioned right on our card. But one thing to mention is the fact that when we went from our alter ego side from 6 as a hand limit, when you're Spider-Man, it actually changes to 5. And you can see this hand limit size in the bottom left hand corner of your hero card or alter ego card. So 2 new cards coming into my hand. Let's see what we got. We got Great Responsibility. It's a hero interrupt. When any amount of threat would be placed on a scheme, you take it as damage instead. That could be really useful, and it's a 0 in terms of resource cost, so that's a huge boost. And oh wow, Backflip as well, another 0/1. Interrupt for defense. When you would take any amount of damage from an attack, prevent all of that damage. Both of these cards are actually quite useful. After drawing up to our hand size, we now go ahead and ready all exhausted cards. And now we enter the villain phase. Now, one thing that's really important to note inside the box right here at the very bottom, you see that 0 right there? That represents how much threat a particular scheme may have from the start. So there will be schemes that will actually start as a main scheme that will already have a bunch of threat on them, making them even tougher from the beginning. This being the intro scenario is at a 0. There's nothing on there from the start, which is why I placed nothing on it. But now that we've reached the villain phase, the first thing you do is place threat on the main scheme, and you just follow what's right above it there. It says +1 for every player, so 1 threat in my case. This next stage of the villain phase is actually directly related to what you do on the player phase. If you are in Spider-Man's hero state, then Rhino is on the attack. Thematically, he knows Spider-Man is in the area and he wants to attack Spider-Man. And on top of that, his minions, if he has any, will also attack. Now, in this particular situation, Rhino would be given a boost card, which is a card off the top of the deck. And we know Rhino's going to attack because I'm in Spider-Man's form. So 1 boost card is given to Rhino. This card, when flipped over, is going to increase his attack, potentially, based on the icons in the bottom right-hand corner of the card. At this point in time, I have the opportunity as Spider-Man, being that I am ready to go, I can go ahead and exhaust Spider-Man to defend up to 3, which could prevent some damage coming at me. This is a choice I have to make because remember, if I exhaust Spider-Man in this villain phase, going into the next player phase, Spider-Man is exhausted, meaning I can still change form even when I'm exhausted, but I won't be able to thwart or attack with Spider-Man at that point. So there is strategy in determining what you should do here. Now on the flip side, if I had have chosen to stay in Peter Parker's shoes, Rhino wouldn't want to attack. He wouldn't even know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. He wouldn't be going after Spider-Man in any capacity or any form. So what does Rhino do when Spider-Man's not around? He's going to scheme and push his agenda forward, meaning he's going to push to try to get up to 7. And when he schemes, he places threat right there. And his minions will also do this as well. So there's this delicate balance happening all the time where whatever you do in the player phase is going to affect what the villain does and how it reacts, and you have to use that to your advantage as you go through the game round by round to try to keep Rhino from scheming his way to victory. And of course, he could also technically take Spider-Man completely out of the game by reducing his hit points to 0. I'm going to go ahead and choose to exhaust Spider-Man in order to defend against this villain attack. And also I have this thing called Spider Sense on Spider-Man, of course. It says interrupt when the villain initiates an attack against you. Initiates, draw 1 card. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So the card that I got was, oh my gosh, ironically, Enhanced Spider Sense. It says hero interrupt. When a treachery card is revealed from the encounter deck, cancel its when revealed effects. This could be really useful, and so I'm going to be able to try to put this thing into play at a certain point in the game when an encounter is going to come out, which is actually going to resolve itself right after we deal with the combat here from the villain. So we know we're defending at 3. Let's go ahead and find out what the boost card is for Rhino. Let's go ahead and reveal the boost card and see what happens. Oh wow. Now this is kind of crazy in 2 different capacities. First off, down the bottom right hand corner, we've got 2 of those icons. Those icons are what bump up whatever it is that Rhino's doing. In this case, attacking. So Rhino's coming at me with a total of 4 damage. But thankfully, Spider-Man defended at 3. So I'm going to go ahead and reduce my health tracker down to 9. So I only took a little bit of a hit, but that could have been really bad if I hadn't have actually put up a defense. The other crazy side of this is, remember this eviction notice from the setup? This was one that's specific to Peter Parker. Now, because this came up the way it did here, this is not going to trigger and be placed on my side of the game board as it mentions right now, because it was drawn up as a result of a boost card. So this was a fantastic time to find this eviction notice. So it's pretty lucky that I got that eviction notice as part of a boost card to Rhino when attacking instead of right now. The next thing you do during the villain phase is grab the top card off the encounter deck and place it in front of the player, and we're going to reveal it now to see what happens. So let's go ahead, and if this had been the eviction notice, it then would have taken effect, but because it was for the boost icons, we only referenced the boost icons, and then the card is discarded. Flipping this over for an encounter, it says, oh, advance, it's a treachery card. It says, when revealed, the villain schemes. Now, earlier on, we put 1 threat on the break-in right here, and I did have a card in my hand, Great Responsibility at the time, that I could have used for 0 resources as a hero interrupt because I'm in my hero form. It says, when any amount of threat would be placed in the scheme, you take it as damage instead. I chose not to use it, but I wanted to show you guys that I still have this card in my hand. Could even potentially use it right now to stop the 1 threat going on the card, but I'm going to choose not to, knowing full well I have Daredevil, who has the capability of thwarting 2. So I'm going to use this card in one of those dire situations when I don't have allies that can help me. So thanks to that treachery card, another threat lands on the main scheme, bringing it up to 2, looking for a total of 7. And just like that, we've gone through the very first game round, and you can see here if the instructional piece was taken out of the last bit, this would move at a very quick pace. And off camera, this game flows extremely fast when you get moving. So we're going to dive right into the second round with less explanation unless something new happens to crop up. So going into round number 2, I really wanted to hit Rhino really hard with this swinging web kick, because this card is awesome, at least on the damage damage side of things, but I really want to focus on building myself up just one more round worth in order to put myself in a better position. I think I can do that with the help of Daredevil using his thwarting ability on the threat that's currently on the scheme. I can use that to try to get another ally into play. So I'm going to use a couple cards here, actually 3 in total. I'm going to end up burning Enhanced Spider Sense, which gives me 1 resource down below, Backflip for another resource down below, and then finally Tenacity. Now this is what I really wanted to keep on Spider-Man, or at least upgrade him at some point, because it allows me to basically ready him, and Tenacity would have been really handy in this situation if I had it already equipped as an upgrade, because it allowed me to basically get Spider-Man back up and ready during this round. But just for those of you that aren't familiar, this is a great example of the different types of resources in the game. You can see right here we have mental on the far left, we have physical in the middle, and we have energy right beside it. So that's a really good example of the 3 different ones right there. But again, when paying for the resource cost of a card out of hand, like this one, Mockingbird, I can use any I want. So I'm just going to go ahead and spend these 3 cards right now to put Mockingbird into play. So now I have another ally here, which is great. The other cards that I have in hand, just so you guys are aware, is Swinging Web Kick and Great Responsibility. So these are 2 cards I could potentially use later on. So now with all the cards out of the hand that I want to pay for, what are we going to do during this turn? First off, I really want to thwart with Daredevil. I think it's just a smart decision. There's 2 threat on the card right now, and I can wipe it away. So I'm going to go ahead and exhaust Daredevil, take 1 damage, put it on Daredevil because he's thwarting with the damage icon, and 2 damage is going to be taken off this card, thereby giving us more time to survive. Of course, Daredevil is taking hits at the same time as doing this. Mockingbird, on the other hand, can actually go ahead and make an attack or thwart. There's no point in doing either, except for attacking really has the only benefit. So I'm going to go ahead and go like this to have Mockingbird make an attack against Rhino. So 1 damage again hitting Mockingbird, and now I'm going to tick down Rhino's total HP to 9. So I like to clarify the terminology that I used when I removed or thwarted away threat. I may have referred to it as damage in the last clip, so that's just a quick reminder that the icons that show up here with the tokens, those represent threat on the main scheme. The other thing that I want to make note of is the fact that really changing the form of your hero is a really critical part of your turn, and you always, even if you don't see the ability on the front side of the card, knowing that you can change the form anytime during your turn is a very big strategic option, because if you know you're going to change your form, you might as well reference the back side of the card because the ability might help you out. And in this case, I've realized I really want to change back to the alter ego Peter Parker, being that the threat has been wiped off of the main scheme. I would rather not be attacked. So when going ahead and flipping over to the alter ego, it doesn't matter that Spider-Man is in an exhausted state. I can simply flip him over like this, but then I automatically gain the ability that's on Peter Parker, which allows me to generate a resource. Why this matters timing-wise during your player phase is that I wouldn't have had to got rid of 3 individual resource cards to get Mockingbird out on the table. So because of that, what I'm going to do is retroactively return one of those cards I got rid of back to my hand, and I'm going to choose Backflip. It's not a card that's going to help me right now, but later, if I get some damage thrown at me, it might, or I could use it as potentially to burn it for some resources. So again, you want to think about that changing of form as you go through your turn and the timing of it, as well as remembering what abilities are on either side. So I'm choosing not to discard any cards from my hand as I've ended my turn. I'm going to now draw up to my new hand size of 6, being that I'm Peter Parker, and then we're going to go ahead and ready all of the cards. So I'll ready them right now, and we're also going to draw up to 6 as well. So let's go ahead and see what 3 new cards we get. All right, time to draw up those 3 cards. Let's see what we get. We got ourselves First Aid. That's nice. Action. Heal 2 damage from any character. So that's good. Next one up is the interrogation room. This is a location. Responds after you defeat a minion, exhaust the interrogation room, remove one threat from a scheme. So that sounds pretty good. Once we get minions out, we'll be able to use that. Or again, I can just burn it as a resource. Oh my gosh, I got my second swinging web kick. That's crazy. So now that I've got both of those in my hands, there's potential for some serious damage even when we move into stage number 2. Very interesting. So into the villain phase we go. We place one threat on the main scheme, and now we know we're going to be scheming with Rhino during this particular villain phase because I'm in Peter Parker's alter ego form. So because of that, a boost card is going to go on Rhino. His scheme value is 1, and we're going to flip this over to find out what additionally this adds to it. Nothing at all. There's literally nothing on this card. That is fantastic. So it's just the 1. So that could not have worked out any better. So just 1 threat token placed on the card. Could have been a lot worse. And now we move to the encounter card. This is where the fun begins. So we deal 1 encounter card to ourselves, and we're going to reveal it and see what we get. We got Gang Up. It's a treachery card. It says, when revealed, if in alter ego form, this card gains surge. So what that means is we're actually going back to the encounter deck to find out what happens next. If we had have been in our hero form, the villain and each minion engaged with you attacks again. So we were really lucky we weren't in that form, or that could have really put quite the beating on us. So we'll go ahead and discard this and reveal the next card to come out of the deck. We got ourselves another Treachery Stampede. Again, this one is differentiating between alter ego or hero. This one says, when revealed alter ego, this card gains surge. So we got another one that we're going to dodge. So that's nice, I guess, in a way. We're dodging all the ones where a lot of pain would be inflicted upon us. So that's a plus. We flip this over to the next one. This one's going to stop right here. Hard to keep down. It says, when revealed, Rhino heals 4 damage. If no damage was healed this way, the card gains surge again. So just when he's right in that window, this would have been the last thing we needed to do in order to make this happen. We kind of get stopped. And the worst part about it is the only card that I could have used to stop this would have been the enhanced spider sense that I discarded earlier on. That would have been something that would have been worth holding on to. But it's gone, and I can't do anything about it. We're going to be jumping him up from 9 to 13 and moving into the player phase. Wow, now that was a serious swing of events there with him getting the health at the exact moment he needed it to keep himself alive, because what I was planning to do to him, he would not have recovered from, but now he's definitely thrown a wrench in my plans. Now the crazy thing is, with what I've got lined up here in terms of Spider-Man, of course, if I flip over to the hero side, Daredevil and Mockingbird, I can generate 2 attack from Spider-Man if I chose to flip this over and use it, 2 from Daredevil, killing Daredevil, or at least removing him from play, and then Mockingbird could do 1 damage, and then with a swinging web kick, that would be 13 damage, which is enough to get rid of the first stage. So basically all that happened is he just made me use up a lot more of my allies to essentially try to take him down, which is bad because I was hoping I could keep Daredevil to do 1 last thwart and get rid of those 2 off of that card. That was the hope, but that last card got me really good. So being that is what it is, and I can't do anything about it, I'm going to go ahead and likely do this swinging web kick, because either way I need to go on the attack. So I might as well do this while I'm in Peter Parker's form, so I get advantage of that extra generation of resource, because a swinging web kick is going to cost me 3, so it's going to cost me 2 with Peter Parker's research there, and or mental resource, I should say. And then we're going to use First Aid, because I don't need it currently, and Interrogation Room. These 2 are going to generate 1 resource each, as shown in the bottom left-hand corner of the card. So both of those in the discard, and that's the 3 I need to generate this attack. It says hero action, attack, deal 8 damage to the enemy. It's a straight 8 damage, so I'm going to go ahead, tick him down from 13 all the way to 5. Now you may be wondering what this icon is right here on Peter Parker's card and why I haven't taken advantage of it just yet. That's because I haven't taken enough damage to make it worthwhile to use, but essentially when I'm in this form, kind of like when I'm in hero form and I make an attack, I can exhaust Peter Parker in order to recover some HP and get some health back. I just haven't had the need to do that yet. Also, I can't go over my maximum hit points, which is 10, so using it would only gain me 1, which is really not exactly the most strategically wise decision to exhaust him for just that right now. I'm more focused on damage. So what I'm going to do is at this point I have no more cards that I want to bring into play, at least yet. I'm going to go ahead and flip Peter Parker over to this side, and we're going to turn into Spider-Man, and we're also going to exhaust a whole bunch of allies to help us take down the first iteration of Rhino. Sadly, Daredevil has to help us, even though I want him to thwart, but this is going to remove Daredevil from the crew. So first we'll do the damage. So 2, 2, and 1 is going to be the 5 we need in order to get past that first stage. I will lose Daredevil in the process, and I will be taking 1 additional hit here for Mockingbird, so 1 away from losing her as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and tick down this dial to 0, and we're going to move on to the second stage. Well, I'm really glad Rhino could not handle the amount of allies that I had lined up against him, because even though he bumped himself up in health, could have been much worse. All right, so now we go to stage 2 Rhino. We have a more aggressive version of himself, now attacking at a value of 3 to start, which is going to make things a little bit more fun for us. And at the very bottom it says, when revealed, search the encounter deck and discard pile for the break-in and taken side scheme and reveal it. Shuffle the encounter deck. So I went through the encounter deck and I found breaking and taken. So this is a side scheme. Rhino is breaking things and taking them. When revealed, place an additional 1 threat token per player here. Underneath it has a hazard icon symbol. This is one of 3 different symbols that can show up on side schemes. This one has to do with the fact that during the encounter card draw of the villain phase, which we normally get 1 card, we actually increase that to 2 now while this side scheme is in play. So this thing's going to have 2 threat on it to start, plus 1 for every player in play. That's 3 total. And if I don't get rid of that, every single encounter card step of the villain phase, I'm going to be dealing with double trouble all the time. So that's just going to be something I have to weigh as to whether it's more important to get rid of that side scheme by burning all this threat away or thwarting it, or going up here and focusing on thwarting away the main scheme. Now there's 2 other types of side schemes in the game with different icons than the one that you're seeing here. The other one is acceleration. It has to do with pushing up the threat at a faster pace. And the other one is crisis, meaning it's a full-on roadblock stopping you from thwarting away threat from the main scheme and making you focus solely on the side scheme. That can be really detrimental in a situation where you have a lot of threat sitting on your main scheme and you're almost ready to lose the game. I've also gone ahead and matched the hit point tracker to 15 to match the hit point value on the second stage of Rhino. And at this point, I'm going to choose to end my player turn. I don't want to discard any cards from my hand. I'm going to draw up to my hand size though. I currently have backflip, swinging web kick, and great responsibility in hand. I'm going to be able to draw 2 more cards up to my hand size limit of 5. Let's see what I get. We got ourselves strength. Ooh, this is the first one that has 2 resources on the same card. This again is going to be huge when paying for that second huge kick. So that's a really nice one to see. And another great responsibility card. That's fantastic. So another one that's going to allow me to block threat as it's placed on schemes. Now, this is one that's probably going to end up going to an FAQ because I was very tempted based on wording here. It says hero interrupt, I am in the hero stage. When any amount of threat would be placed on a scheme, you take it as damage instead. You would think that maybe someone could argue that when this side scheme came out, I had that card in hand, I could play it and ditch all 3 of the threat right away and take it as damage. I don't know whether I'm allowed to do that when the card first comes out or only when the card's already been introduced and threat is being added to the scheme. It depends on timing there. I'm going to play it as the harder version, where I can't use it when it's first being put into play. So I'm going to have to use it later on. That may be incorrect, but at least in this case, I'm not making things any easier on myself. I'm going to go ahead and ready up all of my characters, and we're going to move into the villain phase. An additional threat is placed on the main scheme. And the villain now is going to attack me, being that I'm in hero form. So we're going to take one card here as a boost card and place it below Rhino. I choose now whether I want to defend at all. I am definitely going to defend. I don't want to have to deal with any nasty attack damage. So we're going to defend with Spider-Man at 3 and hope this is again going to make this whole attack an even wash. It'll all come down to whether the boost card really pushes things over. So let's go ahead and reveal it and see how things pan out. Just one, and there actually is an example of what a mercenary would look like, but again, we ignore everything on here and just look at the boost icon of 1. So that's just going to be another single hit to Spider-Man. He's been doing really good at taking small amounts of damage. We'll knock him down from 9 to 8. In addition, I did forget to go ahead and use my Spidey Sense interrupt in order to draw a card, so I'm going to do that now and see what I get. I got myself an item, Tech, Forced Interrupt. When attached minion is defeated, remove 3 threat from a scheme. That is huge. So if I can get a minion into play and purposely take it out, I can remove this break-in and take inside scheme in one foul swoop. That would be pretty awesome. And now we're going to move into the encounter phase where I see one card come at me, but guess what? It's not going to be 1. It's going to be 2 because of this nasty break-in and take-in card. So we'll do 1 at a time here and see what we get. The very first one is, our very first minion. Look at that. We wanted a minion. We got one. This one here is called the Sandman. It has toughness. This character enters play with the toughness status cards. We're going to have to go ahead and put that on him. That's going to be a problem and stop me from killing him quite easily. The next one here coming into play is Caught Off Guard. When revealed, discard an upgrade or support you control. If no cards were discarded this way, this card gains Surge. Well, guess what? I didn't have either of those 2 cards, so this is going to gain Surge. I wonder what fun is coming our way. Oh, that doesn't look good. Assault. When revealed in hero mode, the villain attacks you. And now I have no chance to defend whatsoever. So let's go ahead and make some room for the insanity that's to ensue here. So Assault is going to have me being attacked by the villain. So we're going to go ahead and take this card and just discard this. We're going to take this card as a boost card for the villain, because whenever the villain attacks, it always gets that boost card, which is going to be unfortunate. And we're going to reveal this right now because I can't defend against it. I have no cards that can stop this, but I do have one trick up my sleeve as Spider-Man. This is going to result in an additional boost there, so that's going to be a total of 4 attack damage. That's pretty heavy on the scale. So what I'm going to do in order to avoid this is I'm going to use this 0-cost event card, Interrupt. So on defense, when you would take any amount of damage from an attack, prevent all of that damage. And I knew going into this, because I wasn't going to be defending at all, I was taking at least 3. So this card was being burnt regardless of what that boost card was going to show me. So nothing happens. I backflip right out of danger. I'm glad I held on to that because I knew at some point in time I wasn't going to be able to defend against some kind of attack. And there it happened. So I've gone ahead and put the status tough on Sandman as it indicated on the card. So we're all done there in terms of the encounter phase. But one thing I noticed when I put the status card on this Sandman card is I looked down at Mockingbird and realized I had a response on this thing that said after Mockingbird enters play, so this would have been way back, that I could have stunned an enemy, meaning even the villain himself, which would have given me the ability to stop him from attacking me in the future one time, which would have been really nice. But there's nothing I can do about that retroactively at this point, but I wanted to mention the fact that I did catch that. So let's move on from there. We're heading now into the next player phase. Wow, so much of the game state has changed from the last villain phase. It has thrown a complete wrench in my plans. We have Rhino in stage 2 at full health. We have a side scheme that's here with threat on it we need to get rid of to stop dual encounter cards, which we know, as we saw in the last villain phase, were very brutal. Not only firing another attack at me through the villain, but then dropping Sandman in my lap, who's also now tough, making things even tougher, ironically. So what we're going to be doing is changing everything that I had planned in terms of thwarting things and going to use that spider tracer that I picked up earlier, and I'm going to try to attach that to Sandman after I take a hit to Sandman using Mockingbird. We got to get that tough status off of Sandman. So what we're going to do is exhaust Mockingbird. That will put the 3 damage on this card, knocking Mockingbird out of play, but putting 1 attack on this particular individual. So this card is now discarded, going into my discarded pile, but the tough status says the next time the character would take any amount of damage, discard this status card instead. So this card is now out of play. We actually have a chance to go after Sandman. So at this point, I'm going to get rid of Great Responsibility. Yes, everything has changed in terms of my plans, and I'm going to go ahead and place this upgrade on, which is the Spider Tracer. It says attached to a minion, and of course the glare is blinding you guys. Forced Interrupt. When attached minions defeated, remove 3 threat from a scheme. So I'm attaching this to Sandman. This Great Responsibility card is now thrown away. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to attack him because I don't have time to wait, and I really wanted to use this swinging web kick in order to put some serious damage on Rhino, but I need to get rid of this individual because he attacks for 3 and schemes for a lot, plus I need to get rid of this crazy double encounter situation. So I am going to go ahead and spend 2 strength, or 2 resources I should say, from the strength card here, and also Great Responsibility for the other resource, and use my swinging web kick for 8 damage, which is mass overkill on Sandman, but by attaching the Spider Tracer allows me now to go ahead and remove 3 from either of these. And I'm going to choose to get rid of this break-in and take-in that came in as a result of us beating stage number 1. So that has now been cleared. Thank goodness. No more of that. And the Sandman has been easily, doubly defeated as his health was 4, and I hit it for 8. Bad news is I no longer have a really strong attack and Rhino's still at full health, but now things should be back to more of an even keel. So at this particular point, I have no plans to change over to Peter Parker and make use of the resource that I could have gained by doing so. I do like the idea of having a bigger hand size if I had done that, but at the same time, I'm trying to force Rhino into attacking me as I haven't taken much damage, although I might regret that really soon too, but I want to try to avoid getting too much threat on there that I can't deal with. And right now I'm completely empty of allies or anybody to help me. So we're going to have to go into this one with Spider-Man in hero form. So what I'm going to do is obviously not going to be discarding any cards because I have none in hand. I'm going to be drawing up to my hand size and readying all exhausted cards. So we'll ready Spider-Man back up. We're going to draw 5 cards from here, which are going to make up my new hand. We got ourselves webbed up. It's a condition. Hero form only. Attached to an enemy, max 1 per enemy. The forced interrupt is when attached enemy would attack, discard webbed up instead, then stun the enemy. That is huge. That is probably what I need to try and do to give me some time to build up my forces again, potentially. This one says for justice. It's a thwart hero action. Remove 3 threat from a scheme, 4 threat instead if you paid for this card using, you can see right there, that's the same exact resource type as Peter Parker uses down here, which is fantastic. So that's an example right there of using a specific resource type. You can get up to 4, but that's a fantastic one in terms of the cheap cost to get rid of some of the main scheme. We're going to keep on going here. We got backflip again. That's great for, that's going to be perfect for staying in the hero phase coming up. That could not have come up at a better time. Oh my goodness, there's 3 of them in the deck. I actually had no idea how many are in there, but I guess we have another one, so I've got a chance now. And then finally, yes, an ally. This is good. We got options here. The hard part is going to be making choices. First thing we do in the villain phase is up the main scheme by 1. So we're going to go ahead and remove 2 of these and make it a total of 4. So we're getting ever closer to 7, unfortunately. With ourselves in current hero form, we are going to have Rhino attacking us. So we're going to be going ahead, placing this down below. Remember, I have that backflip card, so no matter what, I'm going to plan on using this right now to avoid any damage. So I'm going to play this right away because I know regardless of the situation, I don't want that damage hitting me. I'm going to backflip my way out of trouble. This would have actually been a 4 attack, so that is not going to hurt me. I'm backflipping right out of there, thankfully. I cannot believe the timing of that one. That was huge, worked out perfectly. Now we have to deal with an encounter. So we take the top card off the deck, reveal it. Oh, this makes things even worse for us. It says, I'm tough. When revealed, give Rhino a tough status card. One thing that I just noticed is that Spider-Man didn't use his spider sense when Rhino made that surprise attack against him where Spider-Man backflipped out of the damage. I should have drawn a card which would have given me an additional card going into this round, so I'm absolutely going to do that now as it doesn't affect the game state. And I've pulled myself Interrogation Room. We've had this card before. I have to say that this particular turn with the cards in hand is one of the toughest turns that I've had in terms of trying to figure out what is the best strategy. There's probably 4 or 5 in my head, but I'm going to go with my gut here and try to thwart away as much threat as I can, plus get rid of that tough. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and try to use 4 Justice. Now, if I can get the full amount of 4 threat instead of 3, in order to get 4 threat removed from this break-in main scheme, I have to use at least 1 mental resource in terms of discarding. So I'm going to go ahead and use these 2 resources. 1 mental, which is Nick Fury. That hurts my heart a little bit because I would have loved to have gotten him in as an ally. Although he only sticks around for 1 round, but he's very powerful, comes in with a really cool force response, and then has pretty decent attack values there, or thwart values. Interrogation Room here, just for a single energy resource, which gives me the 2 I need. So boom, boom, and that's going to give me the 4. So I can go ahead and thwart away 4 threat from the main scheme with this. So even though I am losing some really powerful cards there and had to spend quite a bit to do that, it is saving me and giving me some more time to go after Rhino. Now in my hand currently, I'm holding on to 2 other cards. One is this awesome kick, which gives me lots of damage. And the second one is this webbed up, in case I get into a situation where I really need to tie up Rhino because he's just gonna basically hammer me into the ground. So I'm keeping those cards in hand for now. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use Spider-Man to attack right now, and that is going to discard this status of tough, which is going to allow me to actually get through to him for the first time in a bit. So now that I've cleared everything out during this last round and a half or so, things are kind of back to a more stable spot, and I think I'm in good shape. The question now is, should I go back into my alter ego form? I think so, because at this point there's nothing over here. And scheme-wise, I don't mind if he puts 1 or 2 on. Plus, I would like to draw up to the max amount of card limit as possible. So I'm going to go ahead now and we'll revert ourselves over to Peter Parker. All right, so we're all done my turn. I'm going to go ahead now, draw up my cards. I have 2 in hand. I could choose to discard some. I don't want to. I like the swing, web kick, and I like webbed up. So we'll go into the deck and see what we find. Oh my gosh, we got another webbed up. I do not need that right now, so I'll probably be burning that for a resource. Surveillance Team. This one is allows you to have an action to exhaust, and you remove 1 counter from the card, remove 1 threat from the scheme. That sounds pretty useful for mitigating scheme threat. Next one is, a double resource. That's always nice. This is genius, so that's fantastic, helping me to pay for some expensive cards, of which I have a few now. And lastly, we got For Justice again, another card we can use to kind of keep that threat in check. So this could be a good time to start thinking about doing that first big kick. A new threat is going on to the main scheme. Poor Rhino cannot keep his scheme in progress. So we're going to move on now to what Rhino is going to be doing on his turn based on my character form. I'm in Peter Parker's alter ego form. So Rhino is going to be scheming with a 1 to start, and then the boost card is going to reveal. Oh, that's perfect. So there's absolutely no icons down there. That's a great, that's the 4 health card we got earlier too. So that's a good time to get that. It's out of here, not going to come back to haunt me. Again, it can't restore HP beyond its current hit point level anyway, but that's not what we were looking for here. It's just nice to see that card get burnt. So this essentially ends up being just a single scheme for 1, which is not as bad as it could have been if it had been an additional 1 or 2. So now that that's resolved, let's go ahead and pull an encounter card and see what I have to deal with during the encounter step. Ooh, a Hydra Mercenary. This says guard. While this minion is engaged with you, you cannot attack the villain. So that's going to be kind of a pest of an individual to deal with. For this turn, I'm going to go ahead and actually change from Peter Parker over to Spider-Man right away. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going ahead and using webbed up. I'm going to web up Rhino, and even though I can't attack Rhino because the Hydra mercenary states I can't attack him, I certainly can attach something like this to him and web him up because it's not considered an attack. This is going to help me because when Rhino attacks next, this card's going to disappear, and we're going to go ahead and put stun on Rhino. So for 2 full turns of attacking, Rhino is going to be useless, which is perfect. It's going to cost me 4 resources, which I'm going to be using these 3 cards right here, one with 2 and 2 other ones with 1 each, for a total of 4 resources. So we'll go ahead and discard all those. Of course, some of those are really cool. Surveillance Team's a great one for mitigating threat over a course of a number of turns. But again, I have to deal with some of the problems I've got coming at me, which is probably damage. Next up, I've got 2 other cards left in my hand, which I'm going to hold on to. Still have the Swinging Web Kick, but now I have For Justice again. So I can use For Justice later on to eventually clear the threat that might pile up. And I'm going to take Spider-Man knowing that I'm in the clear with Rhino for defense and go right after the Hydra mercenary. Not enough to kill the Hydra mercenary, but enough to at least damage this guy to the point of almost killing him. Maybe next turn I can pull that off. So at this point now, I am fully done my turn. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and draw back up to the hand size of 5. So cards going back to my hand, I got the Spider Tracer. That's a great one to get because I could attach it next turn to this guy and help remove some more threat. The Web Shooter uses 3 web counters, enters play with 3 counters, and when those are gone, discard this card. Hero Resource, exhaust the Web Shooter and remove 1 web counter from it to generate resources. And they're wild resources, so that's pretty good. Next up, the Helicarrier. That's interesting. It's a location. Max 1 per player. Action. Exhaust the Helicarrier. Choose a player. Reduce the resource cost of the next card that player plays this phase by 1. Okay, that's not exactly the best card. It's more of a support card for multiple players, but I can still use it as a resource. So that is a total hand size of 5 right now, along with the cards I already had in hand. So at this point, I am done. We'll go ahead and bring my card back up. We're moving into the villain phase. The more this goes on, the more I have no idea whether I'm going to be able to pull this off or not. I'm up to 3 now for the threat, and at this point in time, attacks are being made. Now, first off, the webbed up says hero form only, which I was in, attach this to this individual. Forced interrupt. When attached enemy would attack, discard webbed up instead, and then stun that enemy. So we're going to go ahead and remove that and place a stunned on top of this guy. So now this card has been removed, but saved me from an attack from the villain. I still get attack from the Hydra mercenary for 1, and I could technically choose to defend this, but I want to be available to make an attack back at the Hydra mercenary to kill it on the next turn. So I'm going to choose to take that single point of damage, dropping me from 8 to 7. Sadly, I don't get to use my Spider Sense as an interrupt because only when the villain initiates attack against me do I get to draw that extra card. So sadly, no additional card for me there. So that's it for the attacks, and now we're going to reveal an event card and see what happens. We got a Hydra Bomber. Now I've got 2 individuals to deal with. This one says, when revealed, choose to either take 2 damage or place 1 threat on the main theme. Ugh. Well, healing's not really been my strong suit, so I don't really want to see that going down any further. I can mitigate threat, so I could potentially put that threat on there right now, but I have a lot that I'm trying to accomplish, and this is certainly gumming things up for me. So I'm going to choose to probably take the threat. This is risky, very, very risky indeed, but I'm going to put 1 threat up here like so. And that is going to conclude the villain phase. Join me in the next episode for the finale of the battle of Spider-Man versus Rhino, where Spider-Man attempts to take down a stage 2 Rhino currently at 15 health and stunned, along with a couple mercenaries that Rhino has thrown Spider-Man's way, and an ever-increasing level of threat towards Rhino's main scheme. Can Spider-Man pull it off, or is he going to be left in the dust? We'll find out in the next episode. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.